didn't. You insisted on trying to show off to Senor Santos. Oh, I mean, Mr. Santos, wrong class. All right, so, and some of these I already included some of the stuff so that this review session could go faster. So number one, when it came to the Ming Dynasty, and I don't know why I have the Ottomans up there. Okay, where are you, Mings? Here we go. Okay, they did away with paper money. You should know that. But what is the only currency they allowed? Silver. So you do need to know silver. Okay, why did they allow trade with the Europeans? And I put their same answer. Because the Europeans paid with what? Silver. Okay. We got that? We okay? All right. Number two, why did Europeans begin to look for a way around, okay, for an ocean route to China? A couple of reasons. Number one, Constantinople, all right, was taken by the Ottomans, so they had a monopoly, all right? What can you do when you have a monopoly on something?
Jack the price up.
Yes, jack the prices up. You don't have to put jack up, you can say raise, all right? But yes, jack up the prices. Okay, many Europeans did not want to deal with Muslims, okay, good old-fashioned prejudice, okay. In this case, because the Ottomans controlled all the land routes, what was the only way left for Europeans to go? Well, via the ocean, okay. You should know, number three, that it was the Portuguese who were the first to go around Africa, okay? And why didn't they begin to conquer any of the areas? What was the only thing they were interested in? Money. All they wanted was trade. All they wanted was money, okay? Oh, here we go. Did not try to establish colony, okay? Because they just wanted to exploit the people. They just wanted money. Okay, who were the first Europeans to reach the Americas? The Vikings. Yes, I know I asked you this last time. I'm going to ask you again. All right, so if you put Vikings, if you draw a Minnesota Viking logo, I guess, boom. Okay, even though they did not have horns. Okay, I put here, I am going to ask you what Columbus's critical error was when it came to sailing west to reach the east, and that was the size of the earth, okay? If you put his math was wrong, if you put he miscalculated, fine, but it was basically the earth, he thought the earth was smaller than it actually was. Secondary to that was what? What was in the way? Yeah, the Americas were in the way. Of course, that part nobody knew, okay? But the Americas were in the way, okay? So even if he had guessed the right size, okay? Results of the first contact between Europeans and Native Americans, okay? Any one of these, okay? They were killed because Europeans had better weapons. They caught all of these diseases that they had no immunity for, okay? Also remember, the natives weren't united. There was rivalry between tribes, and so Europeans were able to take advantage of that, okay? Either by making alliances with one group over the other, or, helping them, giving both sides weapons so that they could, kill each other off, all right? So any one of those things, all right? A couple of Spanish words you need to know. I know this isn't Spanish class, but conquistadors, that is just the Spanish word for conqueror, okay? I'm literally going to give you a multiple choice, A, B, C, D, E. What does conquistador mean? A, magician, B, I don't know, weird white dude, C, conqueror, D, stranger, or something like that. Okay, so you do need to know that conquistador means conqueror. The other one is encomienda. Encomienda is just a land grant. Boom. Okay, land grant. I can't remember if I made it a short answer, but if I ask you what was included in this land grant, okay, well, obviously everything, forests, rivers, lakes, whatever, and of course the people, all right, any natives that lived on that land. Why were the Europeans able to defeat the natives so quickly? Okay. Any one of these answers, okay? Obviously, the biggest one, diseases, okay? So they caught diseases that they had no immunity for. Obviously, the Europeans forced them to work. So overwork, malnutrition, harsh conditions, things of that nature. All right. So disease, malnutrition, overwork. In addition, I put there Hernan Cortez. He conquered the Aztecs. Okay. And so you could talk about him. Made alliances with other native tribes. That's how he was able to defeat the Aztecs. Okay, but same thing, superior weapons. Okay, they had guns, they had swords, they had horses, they had cannon. Okay.
What's the difference between number 8 and 9?
Yeah. Okay. It'll be in this case. How were they able to overcome the Incas? In this case, the Inca were in a period of political instability, and so they took advantage of that. Whereas with the Aztecs, they made treaties with enemies of the Aztecs. If you want to get a bit more specific, Cortez captured the emperor and then they began to massacre, whereas with the Incas, they demanded ransom and then killed the emperor anyways. With the Aztecs, remember, the Spanish catapulted infected smallpox bodies into the city. Pizarro didn't. I think he would have, but he was a little nicer type of thing. So there's a couple, obviously a lot of similarities, but there are some subtle differences. Okay? Let's see. Okay. You should know what the Columbian Exchange is. Okay? That's when, if you want to say the merging of two cultures, the merging of two biomes, the merging, an exchange of plants, animals, diseases, etc. Okay? I want some examples. So, potatoes and corn. Those only existed in America before 1492. After 1492, we see it in Europe. We see corn and potatoes in Europe. We see corn and potatoes in Africa, in China. Okay, it begins to spread. All right, a couple of other things. Okay, tomatoes, beans, cacao, squash, tobacco, peanuts. Okay, all of those only existed in the Americas. After 1492, we see them in other parts of the world, specifically Europe, but Africa, Asia, etc. What came to the Americas? Before Columbus, there was no cattle. There were no cows or anything in the Americas. What do I mean by swine? Pigs. Okay, I just used the word in the book, but if you write pigs, that's fine. Pigs didn't exist in the Americas before the Spanish brought them. Horses, okay, no horses around here until the Spanish brought them. Wheat, grapes, and of course the big one, sugarcane. All of those come from either Africa, Asia, or Europe, and all of those were brought to the Americas. Okay. I'm going to ask you, why did the Spanish enslave the Native Americans? You need to be able to tell me that they didn't see them as human. okay? That's why, all right? They had no souls, they were subhuman, and so it doesn't matter how we treat the natives, okay? What led to slavery, okay? Well, it started with the fact that, number one, the Portuguese tried to enslave the local natives, but the natives in Brazil either fought back, but usually what they did is they ran away into the jungle. The jungle in Brazil is a lot, more dense, thicker, more dangerous than in other areas, so they were able to get away, okay? And so that's what led to the Portuguese bringing who in as labor? Slaves, okay? And if you put Africans, if you bring enslaved Africans, then yes, okay, you'll get points for that, okay? Kind of the same thing. I guess I had a little brain fart when I wrote this. Where did the Spanish and Portuguese get additional labor? Okay, if you put Africa, boom, all right? And you should know that the reason why, and I wrote it there for you, sugar, okay? It was because of the sugar plantations, all right? And then, of course, you should know, why was sugar so valuable? What was it about sugar? Number one, it's addictive, okay? All right, let's so if you guys are like, addicted to sugar, it's not your fault, but, try to break it. But yes, number one, it's addictive, okay? More than that, though. What was the European diet like? It was very bland, yes, very flavorless. No offense, Euro-Americans, okay? But very bland. And of course, the sugar made it taste 1,000 times better. All right, so yeah, Europeans wanted sugar, okay? If you want to say it eventually became more valuable than like silver, that's how much sugar Europeans were demanding, okay, for their foods, okay? We briefly talked about this, okay, there we go. The Atlantic system, okay? If you want to just draw a triangle, that's fine, but you should know the products that went from one place to another. Did I make this too big? Let's see. There we go, okay? What came out of Africa primarily? Slaves, okay? The slaves went to the Americas. And then out of the Americas, if you want to just write raw material, that's fine. If you want to be specific, and so it depends on the period of time. Obviously, right now, we're talking specifically about sugar. Later on, it becomes tobacco. And then you fast forward to the early United States, cotton. All right, so you have raw materials that go to Europe. Okay, what comes out of Europe? Weapons, number one. What else? Manufactured goods, okay? Yeah, so if you want to say weapons, specifically what weapon? Guns, okay? You take the cotton, you make it into clothing, so that's what textile means, clothing, all right? You take the sugar, that's where you get rum, all right? So, they made rum, and stuff like that, and they sent that to Africa, and then of course the whole cycle just continues, all right? So slaves from Africa to America. From America, you can say raw materials, or you can, be specific, and then from Europe, guns, manufactured goods, rum, clothes, whatever, okay? Turn the page, okay, all right. Talking about the Reformation, okay, you should know who Martin Luther was, okay? He was a German monk, okay? He thought that the Catholic Church had become too corrupt, all right? Oh, that's B. What did he object to, okay? Specifically, number one, okay? It's called indulgences, all right? You can't buy your way into heaven, Okay, that's what an indulgence was. All right, a way to buy your way into heaven. Okay, the corruption. All right, remember, priests and even the Pope had, you know, side chicks and whatnot. Okay, he felt the church had too much money. All right, so yeah. Where do we get the word Protestant from?
Protest.
Protest. Okay, and so some of you are Catholic, some of you are Protestant. If you're Christian, some of you are Protestant. Okay, so if you're a member of a Protestant faith, it started off as a protest against the Catholic Church. All right, so you should know where the word Protestant comes from. All right, 17, I wrote it down for you, so you don't have to. Okay, you should know what Martin Luther's philosophy was, what he wanted to see changed. Number one, that you only need faith. All right, you don't actually need any of the sacraments. No offense, Catholics, you know, baptism, confirmation, marriage, all of the last rites. No, you don't need that to get into heaven. All right, you just need faith. Okay, that's it. If you believe in God and Jesus, boom, you're saved. Okay. Number two, you should only the Bible. Okay, is the final authority. All right, if it's not in the Bible, it doesn't matter. Okay, so you're not going to go to hell for eating fish on a Friday during Lent. All right, that's not in the Bible. And finally, he believed that you don't need a priest. You really don't need anyone. Your relationship with God should be one-on-one. All right, you don't need to go confess to someone and have them, you know, absolve you. You can just pray and develop that relationship, and God knows that he's forgiving you. Okay, so those were his three basic things. All right. He translated the Bible into German, okay? But where are we? Here we go. Okay. But what else? Okay. What helped the movement, you know, kind of progress? And I put there that it has to do with printing. Besides translating the Bible, what else did he do with it? Yes, so you have to remember that it's the Gutenberg press, okay, because it had movable type, all right, we can now print literally hundreds of Bibles and spread them out to people, okay. If your change involves telling people you need to read the Bible for yourself, you need to have a one-on-one relationship with God, you can't do that unless you actually have your own Bible to do it from. Okay, so the printing press, okay, becomes very, very important. All right, so he doesn't just translate it; he also has it printed and spread out to people. Okay, and of course, you know, most people couldn't read their own language, in this case German, much less Latin, and so we see the literacy of people go up because the Bible then is used to teach people how to read. Because what's the point in basing your faith on the Bible if you still can't read it, even if it is in German? All right. You should know, and one thing, I put it here for you so you wouldn't have to. You should be familiar with John Calvin. Okay, his movement is known as Calvinism. The biggest thing about Calvinism is predestination. Okay, you were already picked to be saved. Everybody else was going to hell. All right. How do we know who's saved and who's going to hell? Well, if you were Calvinist, you were saved, obviously. And if you weren't, then you were going to hell. Okay. That was basically it. That was their belief. The other thing, okay, and I didn't write this down because I ain't going to do it all for you. Calvinism believed in simplicity and basics. Okay. You don't need an ornate church, okay? Just a wooden stump and wooden benches, and you can just sit there and listen. We're not here for the decorations and the stained glass and me wearing the fancy robes and the funny hat, all right? We're just here to, like, listen to preaching and read the Bible, and that's it.
Was that a way to attract, like, newer generations?
Yeah, yeah. People felt that the Catholic Church and other groups had put too much focus on, you know, the dress, the ceremony, the statues, you know. simple wood cross. That's all you need. You don't need a big like statue of Mary or Jesus and stuff like that. Okay. This eventually becomes the foundation for groups like the Amish and the Mennonites, and then eventually in England, the Puritans, the Pilgrims. They were all Calvinist, some form of Calvinist. Okay. Now, how does the Catholic Church respond? They respond with something known as the Counter-Reformation. Okay. What are the things that they did? Okay. Number one, okay, at the Council of Trent, and I wrote it down for you there, reaffirmed celibacy. Okay. Yes, even though the church had told priests you can't have sex, all right, back in the 800s, we really mean it this time, all right? And so, yeah, okay? And number two, okay, no more indulgences. Remember, an indulgence was basically what? You're paying money for what? Yeah, to go to heaven, all right? So Anissa's been very, very bad all her life, but she pays enough money. You're like, oh, yeah, fine. But she pays enough money to the local church that the priest gives her an indulgence, and here you go. And Anissa's like, I'm saved. All right, I bought my forgiveness. I bought my way into heaven. Okay, so no more sex for priests. No more buying your way into heaven, basically. Okay. Other things that the Counter-Reformation did is they formed a group known as the Society of Jesus. You just need to put Jesuits, okay? They become the teachers. And even today, they're known for education. They're charged with spreading, like, okay, now we've got to, like, tell all the Catholics, all right, especially those priests, all right, no more sex, and no, you can no longer buy your way into heaven. So, they got to teach these things to the people, okay? And, of course, never underestimate the power of the Inquisition. All right, punishment, pain, torture, that tends to motivate people too. Okay, so anyone who didn't follow these new rules were, of course, put to all kinds of stuff. My favorite's the stretching one. Okay, but that's just me. All right, at some point it made your back feel really good. All right, and then it hurt. All right, but yeah. Okay, 21, once again, I give you the answer there. You should know that what brought the downfall of Spain, or at least what started it, Spain used all of its money, all of its gold, all of its silver that it got from America, to put down these Protestant rebellions, okay? Spain basically used all of its money, okay? And of course, they literally sent their military out. And so if you look at A, this is the beginning of the end for Spain. And of course, this is where the English and the Dutch then begin to gain power, all right? So that eventually they become the most powerful. And one example of this is the Spanish Armada of 1588. The Spanish tried to invade England. First, a storm wiped out most of the Armada. They lost to the English. They were destroyed. And on their way back to Spain, a storm wiped out the rest of the Spanish fleet. Okay, so yeah. All right. When it came to the Mughals, all right, I think, there we go. The only thing I want you to know about India, all right, is that number one, their government was Muslim, but they were all Indian. They were Buddhist, Hindu, etc. Okay, and of course, they did trade with Europeans. Okay, they allowed Jesuit missionaries. They allowed the Portuguese. The only place they allowed the Portuguese was in Goa and Bombay. But eventually, okay, other groups were allowed to enter, all right? The English and the Dutch specifically, okay? You should understand that in China, okay, the population increased drastically, okay? Remember, more people equals more food equals more people equals more food equals more people, and the cycle continues, okay? Eventually it does cap out, but in the meantime, by the 1650s, China had 1/3 of the world's population, all right, at the time, okay? What were the results of gold and silver coming from the Americas? Okay, let's see, that's the next chapter. We're going through it right now here in modern America. Where are we? Here we go. It's the I word.
Inflation.
Inflation, okay? Because remember, when there's a lot of money in circulation, people who buy and sell things are like, well, there's a lot of money, so we can raise prices. But not everyone is getting all of this gold and silver. So as the prices go up, what does it do for the average person? Yeah, they lose out. They can't afford things, okay? And so, yes, that's kind of happening right now. So you can put inflation, you can put high prices, you can put, the lower classes suffer, all right? Any one of those, okay, is an acceptable answer, okay? Mercantilism, all right? If you want to say that was the economic policy in the 16 and 1700s, okay? Wealth is power, power is wealth, all right? That's the way it was summarized. If you want to explain it, mercantilism believed that there was only a certain amount of wealth on the planet. It was a pie, okay? The bigger your slice, the better off you were. And if you wanted to make your slice bigger, what does that mean for other countries? They get less. It becomes smaller. All right. So yes, maybe at the beginning Spain had most of the pie. Sorry, Emily. All right. But after Spain loses all of its money trying to help the Catholic Church, now England and the Netherlands are getting more and more pieces of the pie. Okay. So it was the economic system. Okay. Wealth is money. Wealth is power. Power is wealth. And of course, there's only a certain amount of wealth on the planet, and the more you have, the stronger you are. So you want more wealth for your country, okay? Which is why you have colonies, all right? Because that's going out and getting more of that wealth, all right? Chartered companies, similar to modern day corporations, where you bring a bunch of investors together, and they're the ones that financed all of these like colonial excursions out to the rest of the world. Okay, so where did the Virginia Company settle? Virginia. All right, the Dutch East India Company. Yeah, well, they called it the East Indies, but yes, the Dutch East Indies. All right, so they basically named it after the area that they, went off and settled for the mother country. Okay, you should be aware that there was a mini ice age between the 1500s and the 1700s. So I wrote that in for you. The worst part of that mini ice age was between like 1600 and 1620 to 1750. Okay, that was the worst time. All right, that's when people really suffered. Just one more. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. We don't know why. Just one of those things. Okay. Now this next part, these next parts, I wrote it down for you, so you wouldn't have to. Okay. You should know that the first English colony was Virginia. Okay. You should know that the original settlers only came for treasure. That's it. They wanted to be like the Spanish. 80% of them died. Okay. Now you do need to write a little bit. How did they survive? Who helped them? Yeah, the Native Americans helped them out. Okay. They had compassion on them. And so because there was no treasure, and because of, it's Virginia, for crying out loud, what did the colonists end up doing? Farming. Okay? Yeah, eventually they discovered tobacco, and hey, if we can get people hooked on cigarettes, boom, there's a cash, there's cash. The French colonies, all right, sparsely populated, not a lot of people, okay? And so what they did was they traded, okay, with the natives. Specifically, though, they traded for fur, all right? Once again, you should know that the Dutch only cared about money. That's it, okay? Their colony was New Netherland, but eventually the English take it over and name it to what? New York, yes. Y'all are sitting on the former colony of New Netherland. Okay? We still see a lot of Dutch heritage in names like Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Schuyler. I used to think it was Schuyler, but no, they're like, no, it's a Dutch name. Even names like Manhattan and things like that, that's all from Dutch. Okay? Let's see. Horses allowed certain tribes like the Lakota and Comanche to become powerful. Where did the horses come from? Because remember, they did not exist before 1492. Spain, yes. Wait, did they swim over?
No.
Okay. So how did the Comanche and the Lakota get the horses?
Ships.
Okay, yes, but here we go. Yeah, it's right here. They stole them from the Spanish, but usually, though, it was just horses that got away that the Spanish abandoned. Horses are like rabbits, all right? Boy horse, girl horse, and, 100 years later, you've got horses all over the American West. So boom, okay? So yes, you could put down that they were stolen from the Spanish, or they escaped from the Spanish, repopulated, mated and populated the area. Okay. Sugar plantations, life of a slave. Okay. You should know that it was sugar only grows in hot, humid climates. So obviously the temperatures were awful. Okay. The environment was hot and humid. Okay. Because slaves were viewed as subhuman, they were literally worked to death, okay? So it was like 18 hours of labor every day, okay? 6 days a week. They only gave them Sunday off, all right? So at least they acknowledged a little bit Christianity, okay? If you were a slave on a sugar plantation, you could only expect to live about 3 years. That was max, okay? And of course, once again, to remind you, why was sugar so profitable? Okay, because Europeans demanded it, all right? It made everything better, food-wise. And I apologize, I repeated myself on question 34, so you don't really need that. But question 33, the wealthiest and most powerful of the sugar colonies. Haiti, yes. Okay. The French took it over from the Spanish and produced more sugar than all of the other sugar colonies combined. All right, so it made the French very, very crazy rich, okay, from that, okay. You should understand the slave trade in Africa. Did the Europeans take the slaves directly? No, okay, there were intermediaries, okay, in this case, they exchanged guns, all right, and it was typically the tribes along the coast that did the exchanges. They went into Africa, kidnapped the people, brought them to the coast, traded the guns for the slaves, all right. So the Europeans, showed up and boarded, put them on the ships and whatnot, but it was typically other tribes, okay. moving on, all right, because we are running out of time, but good thing I wrote a bunch of stuff for you, okay? Except for the next one. How did the Dutch, oh, one thing I do ask you, where did 95% of all people taken from Africa go? South America, okay? If you say Latin America, South America, okay, Spanish America, okay, I'll throw my own people under the bus, all right? That's where they went, all right? Less than 5% actually ended up in what became, you know, the United States and stuff, okay? Okay, when it came to Asia, remember, the Dutch would come in, get rid of the people, okay? Put Dutch farmers and slaves, okay, African slaves, in those areas, all right? They would also change the system so that only one crop, all right, was growing there, all right? So one example is Jakarta, all right? Even though Jakarta had different types of like people and crops, the Dutch came in, killed the locals, brought in Dutch farmers, and then the only thing they planted was nutmeg. And so Jakarta became the source of nutmeg for them and for the rest of Europe. All right? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. You should know that it was the Habsburgs who ruled over Austria that not only stopped the Ottomans from conquering Europe, but then they're the ones that took some of those lands back. All right, so they pushed them back into Asia. Okay. Anyways, the Ming Dynasty. Okay. I gave you the information right there. Okay. You should know that the Ming Dynasty ended. The Manchurians then invaded China, and it becomes the Qing Dynasty. Okay. And that is basically the last Chinese dynasty. The last emperor ruled until 1911, so it's basically what we think of modern China, okay? And of course, even though they were prosperous, we do see that the lower class people are the ones that suffer, and so they bring in corn and sweet potatoes to supplement their diet. Okay, the Canton system, what was it? The city of Canton was the only city in China open to foreigners, okay? And if you wanted to trade with Europeans specifically, you had to be a member of a guild. Otherwise, you weren't allowed to trade. Good. The definition of daimyo, okay? Basically a local warlord, okay? Their army was basically the samurai. They led samurai. You should also know what a shogun is. Shogun is the military ruler of Japan. So daimyo, local warlord, commanded armies of samurai. Shogun, military ruler of Japan. Okay?
Was there only one shogun?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at a time. When he died, his son would become shogun. No. There were a lot of daimyos, because they're the leaders of the locals. Okay? Let's see. Some of the changes that the Tokugawa shogunate made. Number one, okay, kind of goes with what Liz here asked. The title of shogun became hereditary, okay? So father to son, okay? Before that, it wasn't, okay? Number two, they moved the capital to where it is today, to Tokyo. And of course, this brought about during the Tokugawa shogunate, we do see a period of prosperity. It actually, worked. Population grew, there was more food, more population. Okay, everyone was making money, all right? So it was actually a very good, financially, a good time for most of the Japanese people. All right. Turning the page then, okay, how did the Japanese deal with Europeans? Okay, at first they allowed Europeans to come into Japan because the Japanese wanted their guns and other technology. Okay, eventually though, they were all expelled because of the Christian missionaries, and because, no offense, Christians, but Christianity, kind of tended to mess up some of the ideas of the local population. Okay. In the end, who were the only Europeans that the Dutch, oh damn it, I just gave it away, that the Japanese allowed? It was the Dutch. Why, though? They only wanted to trade. Yeah, the Dutch didn't try to preach any of their religious beliefs. They didn't bring in, they were Calvinists, so they didn't try to, convert them to Calvinism. Now, of course, you have to think a little further, because remember, Calvinism tells you that there's already a group that's saved, so everybody else is going to hell. Why would you want to preach the Japanese if they're going to hell anyways? So that's why they didn't try to impose their religion. So only the Dutch were allowed, okay? When we're talking about Russia, okay, you do need to mention serfdom, okay, which is basically feudalism, all right? The Tsar, who is the king, had all power, okay? The royal family were the Romanovs, okay? They controlled everything, basically, all right? There were no assemblies, there was no, voting, okay? You followed the Russian king did everything. It was the Romanov family, okay? And while most of Europe had already gotten rid of feudalism, all right, Russia doesn't get rid of it until 1863. But they were very backwards. They were like several hundred years, behind most of Europe. All right. I promise we're almost done. Okay, some of the Dutch inventions. Oh, I'm sorry, 30 Years' War. I'm sorry. You should know some of the effects, some of the results. Okay, any one of these will get you points. Okay, number one. It all happened in what today would be modern-day Germany, okay? So 1/3 of the German population were wiped out, okay? It's the first war where civilians were attacked on purpose, okay? Before this time, it was usually just military against military. If civilians died, it was usually accidental, all right? The 30 Years' War changed all that, okay? Some of the effects, okay? Because it was a tie, all right, when you think about it. But number one, Protestants could move to Protestant countries and Catholics could move to Catholic countries. That way they wouldn't be persecuted, okay? The Netherlands got their independence from Spain, all right? And then finally, the Habsburg family also became rulers of Spain. The Netherlands gained independence because they were part of Spain for a couple of years. All right. If you want to add on a couple of other things, for example, gunpowder and cannon especially. This is the first war where we see that mostly. Before then it was like, swords and knives and bows and arrows. But the 30 Years' War saw the first use of gunpowder and cannon. All right. Some of the Dutch innovations, okay. Number one, shipping, okay. In this case, they were able to come up with boats that could carry more cargo and operate with fewer people. All right. Probably, though, the most important thing, though, they were the creators of what today is a stock exchange. You know, investing in companies, you know, paying your investors dividends, buying stock in different groups, and of course, insurance, the idea of insuring cargo. Thanks to them, y'all have car insurance and stuff like that. All right? Hopefully you don't need it. Okay? English changes to farming. Okay? Number one, okay, crop rotation, always leaving one field empty so that it naturally replenishes. Okay? Number two, varying your crops. Okay? So wheat, barley, clover, turnips. Okay? Always rotating them. This produced more food, which, once again, throughout history, more food equals more people equals more food equals more people. All right. I wrote this down for you. How did France establish an absolute monarchy? Remember, remove the nobles, give them BS jobs. Remember the movie clip? And then, of course, appoint the common people to these elevated positions. Okay. What is divine right?
Right granted by God to rule.
Yes, all right. The king or queen, usually the king, is chosen by God to rule. All right. And if you question the king, who are you really questioning? God. All right. Now, even though absolutism, okay, took hold in France, in Prussia, in Austria, in Russia, okay, what kept it out of England? One word, starts with a P, Parliament. Okay? They were basically the counterbalance to the power of the king. I put here Glorious Revolution, all right? Where are you? Okay? Basically, the English had a king who was Catholic. They wanted to get rid of him, so they brought his daughter and her husband, who were Protestant, okay? They were promised to be made king and queen, but they had to guarantee certain rights to the people, okay? This basically, okay, took most of the power away, so that for number 52, what does King Charles III do today? Yeah, Anissa did it for us. Smile and wave. Smile and wave. If you want to say walking, talking tourist attraction, that's fine. Smile and wave. I've actually had students draw a picture, back when it was Queen Elizabeth, of the Queen just doing this. All right? And then they wrote waving hand. So it was just yeah, that's basically it. Okay, that was the Glorious Revolution. All right? Finally, the American portion of the 7 Years' War. But what's it called? What do we call it in America? Whoever said that. Yes, the French and Indian War. Okay, so you should know the American name for it. And yes, Maya, the British won. Okay, the results, I'm just going to show you the map. Okay, before the war, yes, the British won, and the British got, pretty much all of North America, except for what Spain already had. Okay? On Wednesday, you will walk in. I will give you the test. I'll try to get here early because I know last time some of you were done before class even started. And that's fine with me. All right? Short answer and multiple choice. All right, guys.